Welcome to the Economic Archer podcast. I would remind you before we get started, because I'll forget if I wait till later, make sure to click like and subscribe. Make sure to forward this to friends and family so that they have the information that they need to make the right decisions to protect their buying power. Okay, the first podcast we talked about whether it was better to store your buying power in currency or in something that's backed by gold or gold and silver itself. And clearly I showed you the currency since 1913 has lost 97% of its buying power, where gold has actually gained buying power. So gold and silver, or gold and silver backed currency, it's not even a close call on which is better between that and fiat currency, which is money backed by nothing but faith and confidence in your government. The next podcast we talked about, okay, so you're choosing to not wait until our money's backed by something, which I think is smart. Put your money in gold or silver. We talked about whether gold or silver would be better to invest in. And we talked about 8 different things that you needed to look at to make the right decision for you. And I ended it by saying I'm not a financial advisor, but for me personally right now, it's better to invest in silver, because you can buy 84 ounces of silver for 1 ounce of gold. If you look historically throughout the history of time and took an average, it's probably like 20 ounces of silver for every 1 ounce of gold. If you look in the last 40 or 50 years, it's more like 40 to 1 is the average. So the point is, even if you want to end up owning gold, all gold at the end, you're better buying the silver now. And when that ratio corrects itself and you get to 20 to 1, then you convert your silver into gold. You'll have a lot more gold than you would have if you'd invested in gold in the first place. So once we determined that, and I told you right now I'm investing in silver, then we talked about the different forms of silver that you could buy: 100 ounce bars, 10 ounce bars, 1 ounce silver rounds, which is just bullion, and then you could buy sovereign mint currencies like I showed you. This is a Krugerrand. And then I also showed a maple leaf. And then also for barterability, looking at things like junk silver, which would be constitutional silver, silver, dimes, quarters, half dollars, all that were made prior to 1965. Today, in this podcast, we're going to look at, okay, if you've heard what I'm saying and you understand this has already lost 97% of its buying power, then we have to consider this. How much time do you have to accrue your position in gold or silver to protect yourself? So I would say there's several things we need to look at. The indebtedness of our nation. And we hit on this in the very first podcast, but I want to just go back into that. If you go to usdebtclock.org, usdebt, D-E-B-T, clock.org, it's going to show you the U.S. debt is like $30.6 trillion. If you remember, I told you if you stack dollar bills on top of each other, one on top of the other, that $1 trillion would go from where I'm sitting to the moon. That's 1 trillion. We're $30.5 trillion in debt. When you consider, though, Medicare, Social Security, veterans benefits, it's more like $100 trillion in debt. And remember I said, this has value as long as you have faith in our government to pay its debts. It's lost 97% of its purchasing power. The question I have is, could we repay $100 trillion in debt? I have my doubts. But I also remember what my dad told me, and if you remember, I shared you with the first video that my dad was an economics professor, had his doctorate in economics. But he said when we went off the gold standard in 1971, there's going to come a day when the dollar will buy way less. We're here right now. Go to the store, see how much a dollar will buy you. Go look up online. What would a dollar bill buy in 1913 when we started this economic system? Folks, we're right at the end of the life cycle of this. But remember what my dad said, fiat currency will end up being worth. There's been 4,000 fiat currencies. They've all ended up worth zero in the end. As soon as people lose confidence that the debts are going to get paid, they're going to stop taking this as a form of payment. It's worthless. So, to that question of how much time do you have, here's some other factors to think about. What is the stability globally? Well, we're seeing Russia is in Ukraine now. We're seeing China threaten to go into Taiwan. North Korea is, firing off missiles and they're making threats. Iran is not, it's an enemy of ours, and we're not in a good situation there. And the reality is, if you look historically, whenever other countries see weakness in our leadership, that's when they strike. If you think of the Iran hostage situation when Jimmy Carter was president, which ironically, when Jimmy Carter was president, you might want to look this up. Look at what the inflation rate was. Look at what interest rates were. And employment, it was horrible. Horrible. And the only difference between then and now is back when Jimmy Carter was president, we only had a couple of $1 trillion in debt. We have $30 trillion in debt, and when you consider unfunded liabilities, over $100 trillion in debt. So I don't think we have much time. I think it needs to be a priority of yours to protect your buying power. And we talked about in the last one as well. We're hearing more and more talk of an EMD strike being a possibility, not necessarily here in the United States, but it is possible that, China, Russia, anybody could fire a weapon, a bomb, to go off in our atmosphere, which could totally shut down our electric grid. Then you can't access your dollars. You having some gold and silver to be able to barter and buy the things for your family, food, to pay other bills, to get the things you need, it's essential. I'm going to tell you something else too that is sad to me, that when my dad was teaching college, and this is back in the 70s, that they used to routinely, people that believed in real money would tell you you need to keep 15% of your money or so at least in things like gold and silver. And that way, if the stock market fell, if something tragic happened, your gold and silver will go up drastically, because when there's heavy risk and there's concerns in the world, people take their money out of the stock market and they take their money out of dollars and they put them in gold and silver. And I believe we are on the edge of that happening. I mean, the edge. So the time you have to get this is very slim. And I'll tell you something else too that I hear from a lot of the retail sellers of precious metals that I talk to. They warn against waiting too late and for you to accumulate whatever position you're going to have in gold and silver. And the reason why is because their supply is really down from where it used to be. And if you consider we're moving toward more use of solar panels, more use of batteries in battery operated cars, the demands for silver are going up, up, up. So eventually those industrial needs are going to get met. You could literally see where countries come in and they make it to where they nationalize the mines and make it to where whatever silver is produced, they're going to keep it for national security, because we have to have it to make, as I told you, the weapons we use, the things that we use around our homes. They're going to make sure those people have it, and there may not be silver available in the forms we need it to be able to have it to store our wealth. That's just food for thought, something that you need to think about. The other thing I would say is, going back to that confidence in the government, part of the reason you have confidence in something is that when they say something, you can stand on it. If they make a promise, you know they're going to deliver on it. And I would just ask you, look at some of the statements that we've heard from government in the last several years and ask yourself, has what they said ended up being the truth? Whether you're Republican, Democrat, really doesn't matter. Think about this. If you if you consider we spent $40 million believing that the former president was colluding with Russia. What did we just learn? We just learned from the head of the campaign for the other side that information was generated by a political campaign. It was not generated by fact. We spent millions of dollars researching that, which showed the media knew long time ago that this information wasn't real. What's even worse is that the FBI and CIA, they knew early on. In fact, in the testimony in a recent trial that we saw, they knew the very first day they got this alleged collusion between the former campaign, the campaign of the former president, and Russia. They knew it wasn't real. But yet we went all this time, all this money, that makes me question whether or not I can put confidence in what's being said. Then let's look more recently. They told us this inflation that we were experiencing, oh, it's transient, it's going to go away quickly. What are they saying now? They're saying it's not transient. It's not going away quickly. And they're starting to do things like raise interest rates in the hopes that they're going to be able to curb inflation. The reality is, when you owe $30 trillion, there's only so much you can raise your interest rates. You can't lift them very high because pretty soon all the money that's coming in through taxes is going toward interest on the debt. It's not paying for all these services for, whether it's our elderly or people that are just in need of help. It's not able to pay for those. So what I'm telling you, the situation that we're in, it's very real, it's very imminent. So if you're hearing what I'm saying about the wealth, the purchasing power storage that you get with precious metals, if you're hearing what I'm saying about fiat currency, 4,000 of them, they've all ended up worth zero in the end. As soon as people lose confidence that that government's going to pay its debts, it's worthless. If you're hearing that and you're now saying, I need to don't procrastinate. You need to get the position that you're wanting to have in these metals. You need to do it now. And on the next podcast, we're going to talk about some of the places that I've dealt with in the past or that I've spent a lot of time researching that are going to be able to help you, where you can be confident I'm going to get what I'm looking for, get it shipped to my door, get it stored, or put your 401k away where it's stored in precious metals and it's safe. With that, I'm going to let you go for now, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. Thank you.